what I want to take the next little bit telling you guys about look at it.
AJ, be happy. Oh.
Look at it.
It kind of makes me want to throw up.
So, this is an application for chapter office, and I want to tell you guys a little bit about this. So, as members of the FFA, you are officially eligible to run to be a chapter officer for the 2021-2022 school year, which is kind of wild. So, with our officer team, we haven't had a chance to really talk about this yet, but we will in the next couple days. Obviously, we have our picture board over here that highlights our officers. The Cardington FFA has 11 officers. National Constitution says every chapter has to have 6. Those are what we call the constitutional officers. So that's your president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, reporter, and sentinel. 6 constitutional. Advisors kind of ones, and then student advisors are kind of brought in sometimes. But as far as constitutional officers, those are your 6. That's why there's 6 national officers. But on the state and chapter level, you can add some different officer positions depending on the needs of your chapter. So we have 11. We have the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, reporter, assistant secretary, assistant treasurer, assistant reporter, student advisor, sentinel, and chaplain. Okay. So there's 3 of them back here. With that being said, we have 11 officers. In order to be an officer, you just have to be an active member. You can't apply until the middle of your freshman year, so you can't be an incoming member and be a leader of the chapter, right? You don't know what's happening yet. To be a president or vice president, you have to be a returning officer. So you have to have served 1 year on the team before you can serve as president or vice president. We do have an unwritten rule that typically that president and vice president are seniors. So that's not anywhere in our bylaws or our constitution, but it is kind of an unstated, as long as we have an eligible senior returning officers, that they would be eligible for that role. But they do have to be a returning member. So none of you can apply for president or vice president this year, according to our constitution. So you are officially eligible for 9 positions, and I want to tell you guys a little bit about that. So serving as an officer is a big responsibility. In our chapter's been around since 1939, so we've had an officer team for 81 years now, right? It's a big deal to be an officer in the FFA. It's a really big deal to be an officer in an FFA chapter that's one of the top 10 in the state. Okay, there's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. The only reason it means something is because of the people who have held that title before you, right? So if you think about it, the people who have come before you, who have served before you, if they sucked, right, or they were bad representatives or bad examples or bad role models or didn't plan anything, then the office wouldn't have the esteem that it does, right? So it's not an esteemed position because of the title, it's an esteemed position because of the people who made it that way before you got here. So it's important that going forward, you have that in the back of your head, that if I want to be a leader in this organization, I also accept the responsibility of continuing to raise the bar for the next people who come after me too. Okay. To be on the officer team, there is a decent amount of work that goes into that, right? They're kind of the behind the scenes crew. They meet in the summer, they plan all of the stuff that you guys do, they make plans for it, they have committees for it, they chair those committees, they do a lot of the behind the scenes work to make those events happen. We have some work nights throughout the year, especially before New Member Night, because that's one of our bigger events. Before the banquet, that's another huge event for us. That they're really putting together the stuff where, like the escape room, the committee and the officers designed that this year. Okay, so they planned that out. So there's a lot of things that they do going into that as well. That being said, there is a lot of work that the officers are asked to do that other members are not asked to do. On the flip side, there's some rewards and opportunities that the officers are given that aren't necessarily offered to the other membership, and that's not to be exclusive, that's not to say, oh, they're better, whatever, but they do work that's not asked of other people, so they get a little bit of benefit that's not offered to other people too. Biggest things with that are our summer officer retreat. We usually do 3 to 4 days on a lake. Okay, we get to boat a little bit, we work while we're there, but we also get to have some fun. We also usually do a winter officer retreat. We pick like a cute little winter date night activity, do lights, ice skating, tubing, something like that. And we just get to do a Christmas exchange and hang out and enjoy each other's company. Okay, and that's a reward that we get because we're putting those efforts forth to make our chapter successful. So there is added work. There's also added benefit. For those people who say, no, I'm way too busy. I play a sport. I play 2 sports. I'm involved in other things. I can't do it. I throw that excuse in the trash. You can do it if you want to. Okay, you have to make that decision. One example that I've used from that, and I'll use it for lots of years, and people roll their eyes when they hear me say it too many times, but you guys all know Mrs. Gill, right? Her youngest son, Daniel, was on my officer team my first year, served as an officer for 3 years. He was also a 4-sport athlete. Okay. He also was involved in some other organizations in his church and stuff like that too. It's doable. You just have to make the decision to work that into your schedule. Also, I used Joe as an example this morning. I mean this in the best, like, don't take it wrong, but homeboy's a big deal on the football team, right? Kind of an integral part of it. So obviously in the fall, he's really busy because he's balancing his responsibilities on the football team as well as his responsibilities as an officer. So if you have a really busy season, that's why you have a team. Not that you can neglect your duties, which he never has, but I want to use this as an example. If you guys remember freshman orientation, he literally ran off the practice field, handed me his helmet, walked over to his group and said, hey guys, ready to learn about leadership, right? So he might not have been there for the hour leading up to where maybe we were setting up, and his teammates might have set up that station. But in the winter, when he's not in a sport, he's here for 2 hours setting up, while maybe some other officers have some other things that they're juggling too. So it's a team for a reason, because we act as a team, we understand that we all have commitments. It's just, like I said, making that decision that you want to balance this as one of your commitments. Okay. Like I said, that's not an excuse, and he's never used as an excuse, but I just think that's a good example. Yeah. Trying to think if
Okay, that's been on your like ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just want to get it off.
So a lot of stuff that goes into it, a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of fun, and a really cool opportunity to grow as a leader outside of just being an FFA member. Okay. So I want to walk you guys through the process. It is a quite extensive process, and then if we have time, I'll let these guys talk about their experiences a little bit too. When you open this packet, you are going to find 2 pieces of paper that outline the 11 offices that we have and the duties of that office position. Okay, so if you're like, hey, I think I want to serve, but I don't really know which officer I want to be, first of all, you're running for a spot on that team. Okay, once you get on that team, your placement is a little bit different. So you can check this out, see which ones you think you'd be good at. Hazel is a rock star at throwing candy and praying. Javelin's a great spot for her, right? That's something she's been for 2 years. So things like that. You got a good arm, you got a word with Jesus, maybe apply to javelin. Reporter, I use this as an example too. Brooke was our assistant reporter last year. She's our reporter this year. Chica has never, 1 year she didn't even put reporter on her top 3.
Homeboy, Chica.
Last year it wasn't her top option, but the girl owns a laminator and a Cricut. Like, she was kind of after it. Cutting machine?
Okay, I've been wondering that because, like, I heard you talk about it when I came in here, and in 4th grade when Brooke was talking about it.
So she obviously had a knack for scrapbooking. She had the supplies for it, so it was a really good place for her. So just looking at some of those different things and where you might fit well on the team, where your strengths might benefit the team. The application process itself, there's a 4-part process. It's very mathematical. So the first part is the application itself, and I'll talk about what all that is comprised of. The second part is a speech given to the chapter. So at the March meeting, all of the officer candidates will stand in front of the chapter. They'll draw a fishbowl question. They'll give a 30-second to a minute-long answer to that fishbowl question. It's done the day that we cast ballots. So if there's somebody who maybe doesn't know a lot about you, that's a great way for them to see you and decide if they want to vote for you or not.
Wait, what would it be about? Like themselves?
They're kind of, some of them are serious, some of them are funny. They're none like, what is a plow and how is it used? Like, they're not that type of thing. But those speeches are graded by the retiring senior officers. So they've obviously served on the team, they know what it takes, and so they have a little bit of insight into Your speech is 10% of your overall candidate score. Your application is 20% of your overall candidate score.
Say it one more time.
What's the
Sorry.
other seven?
I'm gonna type 10% and 20%. The ballot, the vote then, on one day I will give you a ballot. It'll have everybody who's running for an office. There's 11 spots. You circle 11 names. So the 11 people that you want to be on the team, regardless of their position, the number of votes you receive divided by the number of votes that were cast is a percentage of the votes that you receive. That is 25% of your overall candidate score. So it's not a popularity contest. It's not going to make or break you, but your perception to your peers is important as a leader, right? You have to be respected. You have to be somebody that somebody's going to listen to. So that's important on that ballot vote. The last 45% of your candidate score is your personal interview. So at one point we will have officer interviews. It'll be with 2 people who are not faculty of this school, but they are related to the FFA, so they know what they're interviewing for. They'll conduct an interview. They give you a score out of 45. All of these things are put onto a spreadsheet. You get an overall candidate score of 100 points. Once everything's inputted, we sort the names based highest to lowest on the candidate score. We draw a line under number 11. Anybody above the line makes the team. Okay, so it's a culmination of those things. Yeah. There's been some really tight spots for 11, 12 too, so it gets kind of iffy. Once you're on the team, then we talk about what role you will play on that team. But it's an honor to be on the team regardless. The application itself is graded by an anonymous individual, but your name is taken off of the application. So unless you give away your identity in your essay, they don't know who you are. So there's no predetermined bias by knowing you or not knowing you. The application itself, there's directions right here on what order these pages need to be put together in that application. So integral part of being an officer, you have to be able to follow directions, right? So you should be able to put this together by reading that. There's 4 questions. You pick 3 of them to answer, and then there's an essay. So the essay should be on a separate piece of paper and attached as well. It should all be typed.
We're gonna get this copyright.
Next page is your petition. You write your name. You write the top 3 spots that you would like to be considered for. We take that into consideration. If you're the top ranking person on the points, we're gonna look at it and say, okay, what do they want to be? Is that a good fit for them? One thing to keep in mind if you don't get your number 1 spot, but you think you're a really high ranking person, is that maybe you're really good and you'd be really good at like 8 of the jobs, but there's somebody else on here whose strength skill set is like totally built for one very specific one. Maybe they rank lower than you, but they're gonna really fit that spot that you wanted most well, where you're gonna fit a couple other options well. So then we're kind of placing people based on their strengths and how they work together. So we want the best people in all of those positions based on their skills. Petition, you have to have 10 other Cardigan FFA members sign your petition. If you can't get 10 people who will sign your paper saying they think you should be an officer, that might be your sign, and maybe this isn't for you. Step 1. So you just get those signatures. Your parents will sign it saying they understand what it is that you're applying for. I'll sign it when you turn it in, and you sign it as well.
Does your name have to be
Let me finish this super quick. I know we're like really close, but I'll get it out, I promise. The next page is a contract. There are expectations that you need to achieve as an FFA member, right? There's standards to stay in the organization. We have a little bit higher expectations of our officers. They're not super hard. Just don't be a horrible person or commit a felony, and usually you're good. So
sounds like I've heard.
we just sign off on it, saying you understand those expectations. It's part of the application because should you get elected, it goes into effect immediately. So you can't get elected and then do an illegal substance the next day and it'd be okay. The next page, you have 2 teacher recommendations. These need to be given to Cardington teachers. They fill them out, they turn them into me, you never see them again, but they are part of your application score. So you're not gonna bring it back to me, but it isn't ever a bad idea to say, hey, did you get that recommendation done and turned into Miss Wallet? No, I didn't, thanks for reminding me. Yes, I did, you're taken care of, thank you so much, right? Not a, did you turn in my paper for me? But, hey, did you get the opportunity to do that? I appreciate you helping me apply for this. How do you know that's yeah? The leadership point sheet, this is modified a little bit to meet this year's stuff. But this is just saying how active of a member you are. It's 10 points out of 100 on an application that's 10 points or 10% of your total process. So this isn't going to make or break you. There's opportunities if you want to be more involved. It's not going to hurt you. But that being said, it is nice to see people's involvement and how far they've come going into that. Do you guys have questions about applying for an office, being an officer?
Does it have to be a high school teacher?
They should be in this building.
This building, Matthew, not another
My
building.
head up is
Will you leave?
Questions?
Nope.
If you want one, stick around. Boys, if you take your hat off, you don't need you leave my room. That'd be great. Thanks.